Welcome in to Cover Crimson. My name is Emily Grace McWhorter. I'm here with Clint Lamb, and we're with you every Wednesday and Friday. Today, we're kicking things off right after the next round guys finished, trying to give you guys a chance to come talk and listen to some Alabama football discussion. Clint, I like this new time. Are we going to keep this up, or is this just a one-off?
I think we might actually end up keeping this up. Okay. I like the idea of following the next round, and that way just kind of it was more complimentary in my opinion.
For sure. For sure. I love it. As you guys file into the chat, we hope that you've had a good week so far. Remember, we will do Wednesdays and Fridays regardless. We've moved on from that Monday slot. No problems there, though. We think that this Wednesday and Friday will be better. And we also are always trying to accommodate you guys, the listeners. So if you guys have a preference, let us know. We would love to accommodate that in terms of timing. But Clint, I do like this noon spot. It feels good to be here. What are your thoughts for this weekend of basketball before we get into football?
I was glad that both teams won pretty handedly. And I think Vanderbilt kept it closer against Auburn. But, a 12-point win on the road in the SEC, that's impressive. Alabama obviously goes on the road and has a dominant victory over Texas, who has played some pretty good basketball at times. And so it's just a lot of people, myself included, thought, were either one of these two teams going to be looking ahead to Saturday? Is that going to affect them as far as the games they played last night? Didn't seem to. I think that says a lot about these teams, and I think it's setting up for a pretty epic weekend.
Yeah, it should be good. So I was asked this morning with our friends over at SEC Network, Peter Burns and Dar Nokwa, about the energy right now of this game and if there's animosity, if it's to the level, as they put it, as tree poisoning. And I'm curious what your thoughts are on that. Also, you can check out the basketball show on the next round as well. They've got some great information, Jim Dunaway and Taylor Corn there. But I want your thoughts on this too, Clint.
I don't think either of these fan bases like each other very much. I think that this rivalry on the basketball end has only strengthened the last few years. Like, I think both Bruce Pearl and Nate Oates are kind of pushing each other to new limits. I like kind of the trash talk that both coaches have done at times, taking little jabs. I don't know if that's necessarily gone on as much this week. I haven't noticed anything, but in recent years, we've seen a little bit of that, but it's been all in good fun. Like, it's not trying to start anything. It's embracing the rivalry. And we know how much these fan bases really don't like each other, but is it poisoning trees level? I don't know. If people aren't feeling that way, then maybe you don't have a little too much Bama in you. Maybe you got too much Bama football in you. Because otherwise, I mean, this is pretty Bama as well.
Yeah, no, I think it's a fun topic to discuss because I think that the state of Alabama right now is just being rewarded with really good basketball across all facets. You'll get UAB and Stanford as well, and then obviously 1 and 2 Auburn, Alabama. It doesn't really get better than this, and it should be just a fun week. But I like that question because I feel like it kind of makes you think about the different sports, what people are feeling, and I think I landed on. I think both fan bases are happy to be rewarded with good basketball. And I think it's an added bonus that the matchups are what it is in such a historical fashion. So Saturday should be pretty crazy. And then, guys, we turn around and a couple weeks later, Alabama is headed down to Auburn to play the second version of the Iron Bowl of basketball.
Yeah, the next several games for Alabama, a bunch of top 25 opponents, a bunch of top 10, top 5 opponents. So it's going to be a gauntlet. But this is kind of Nate Oates, he can't really control conference schedule, but he controls out of conference. And there's been a reason that Alabama has kind of been battle tested and done well once they've reached the tournament. And that is the fact that they schedule a very tough slate of opponents, and having this all throughout the season, I think is only going to benefit them that much more. The SEC, I mean, this is as impressed as I've been with the SEC maybe ever when it comes to basketball.
No, and it's crazy to think about how dominant the SEC is right now, and it's making national headlines. All of the attention is on the Southeastern Conference, and it's for a good reason. It's just been great basketball week in and week out. I'm excited. It feels like the season has flown by. But with that being said, that means that we're getting closer and closer to spring practice for Alabama. We do talk about football, me and Clint, but we had to get some basketball out of the way. Clint, have you heard anything? I know from what I've seen on Twitter, the program is doing some fourth quarter drills in a program right now.
Yeah, these are the times where you really get better. Like, everybody thinks, Saturdays are to show off how you've improved. These are the times, the fourth quarter spring ball, That is going to affect things as well, give you some opportunities to develop and do all that. But, you know, I'm impressed with how impressed Kalen DeBoer is with where this team is currently at. Like you've seen, you know, how much he's praised the team since the season ended.
Yeah. And we have some quotes we're going to go through because, you know, we've talked, you know, last week about some comments made from Rock Montgomery about, you know, the program and where it's heading. There was obviously something that stuck out to a lot of people, and that was the practice timing, right? People were not too happy with the discussion that even had to be brought up. Savannah, Georgia. Okay, that's right near my neck of the woods, Georgia Southern. Chad, thanks for tuning in. Always love the low country time I spent down there. But we're going to get into some of that today. And Clint, you sent me a few of these quotes, and we're going to talk through them. And some of it is, you know, some guys that are moving on, but I want to start with Malachi Moore and talking about the defense, because I think we're all aware that there was quite an adjustment shift that had to take place with players that were recruited under Saban that transitioned to Coach DeBoer, and then guys coming in that had to learn the Swarm defense. There's a lot of, you know, variance, and it's a different kind of style of play. But once you get it, from what I've heard, obviously, guys, I'm not playing any, you know, defensive positions, but I've heard that it's really fun once you learn it. So Malachi Moore said this, and this was to Bama Online. He said, "I feel like year 2 will definitely be better than year 1. Going through a coaching change is difficult, and we knew that it was going to be a hard task to go out there and try to win a national championship. In the grand scheme of things, we knew it was going to be tough, but that was a challenge all of us accepted and all of us wanted at the end of the day. But I believe in Coach DeBoer and what he's doing with the program. I feel like they're going to be right back to it next year."
Yeah, I love the quote, and he's not the only one. Well, since we're talking about the defense, I'll go ahead and read what Tim Smith said too. We also got some quotes from James Burnip and CJ Dippre. And these, of course, as EG said, they're coming from Bama Online, who spoke to these players down at the Senior Bowl.
Yep.
But Tim Smith said to be a lot more, as far as expectations in year 2 under DeBoer, his response was to be a lot more dominant. I tell a lot of people I feel like this year was kind of like a free trial year, just trying to get comfortable, understanding everything, but still understanding the standard. He's got 1 year under his belt now. I feel like the sky's the limit this year. I feel like they're going to go all the way. So this is kind of, we've talked about this a lot, but being more comfortable. And that is something that, you know, Tim Smith specifically mentioned, that word comfortable and confident. I think those are the two biggest factors between year 1 and year 2, is that guys now are going to know what to expect. This is going to have been their second offseason under DeBoer. And so really the first one is kind of like when you're a freshman and you get somewhere and it's really an acclimation period. Like that was last year.
Yep.
This year it's more about mastering or being able to expand on everything that you did. Like defensively, I think Kane Womack still got a lot in the arsenal that he hadn't even come close to revealing. And I think that that's going to make a huge difference. I mean, when you look at the performances that they had last year, you know, I thought they played really good football at times. There was also a couple of games where maybe they didn't play their best, but I would expect them to continue to grow on that side of the football. We've been talking a lot about the offense because of Ryan Grubb and just the fact that that was supposed to be Alabama's bread and butter under Kalen DeBoer. And to me, it was the more inconsistent side of the football, in my opinion, because you kind of lived and died by quarterback play. But, you know, both sides of the football, I think they're going to be a lot more confident, comfortable heading into year 2, and I think it's going to make a world of difference.
Well, Clint, you kind of touched on it there with the coaching staff too of Kane Womack. How much more comfortable and confident do you think the staff will be too, even going past the players, but as they have a season of SEC play under their belt and they're adjusting to their roles at Alabama?
Well, my question, you know, staff changes, and it's not really. This is not in relation to Nick Sheridan because he was kept on the staff, but think about staff changes that were made and wonder why those were made after only 1 year. I can't really definitively tell you an answer to that, but what I will say is that typically means it's kind of like Ryan Grubb and, you know, McDonald, the head coach for the Seattle Seahawks. It's like there was a difference in philosophies. There was different approaches, and it was leading to where like the team wasn't playing as a complementary style of football between offense and defense, and that led to the Seahawks being good, but they probably could have been a little bit better. When you talk about what Alabama has done as far as the changes that they've made, I think Mo Linguist being the secondaries coach, the defensive backs coach, I love that move. I know that a lot of the players love him. I love Jason Jones being added to the staff, being an assistant for him. He's also a guy with plenty of experience. I mean, now it's going to be those two kind of working in tandem. For a majority of this, outside of adding Ryan Grubb, which is not some sort of, massive change in relation to typically when you change a coordinator, but that's really been the only change on the offensive staff, because Nick Sheridan, really, he's just lost play calling duties, but he's still going to be working with the quarterbacks who he was working with anyways. So like I said, I mean, just your play calling, which is a massive difference, but it's at least somebody familiar. But I think the continuity of this is really going to help as well.
Yeah, and we mentioned it on covercrimson.com. Make sure you check us out there. You can get $25 off your annual subscription if you sign up. We'd love to have you, but that was a point that you brought up about Coach Sheridan. And we won't stay here too long, Clint, but you mentioned that continuity piece. Were you surprised to see where he landed in terms of his coaching role?
Nick Sheridan?
Yeah.
I really like the work that he did with the tight ends at Washington. Jack Westover was a former walk-on who turned into a really good player. I thought Devin Culp, we've seen he started to emerge for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers late in the season, and got a bigger role. And he was kind of their Y tight end, inline tight end, blocking quite a bit. They had some other, obviously Josh Cuevas was a part of that. They had like a 4-man rotation at tight end, probably more so 3-man, but at times they were using a 4th. But I really liked the work that he did with all those guys. I thought there was excellent development. So I actually think Brian Ellis is a good tight ends coach too. He's new to it, but just, what they needed out of that position in 2024, they got exactly that. And so it's going to look different moving forward. They won't need that style of tight end as much, but, Nick Sheridan coaching the quarterbacks, I'm not overly surprised by that, because I think Kalen DeBoer liked where some of the players were heading. I think he liked the development of Austin Mack. We heard good things behind the scenes. We heard really good things about Ty Simpson. I'd heard that he had done pretty good work with Dylan Lonergan as well. So it's like, you got Ryan Grubb who has that input, but he gets to take a step back. I find it interesting, both on offense and defense. I don't think either coordinator is going to be one of those 11 off-campus recruiters. That takes something off of their plate. And just like Ryan Grubb coming in, but he's not the quarterback's coach, Kane Womack went from being the defensive coordinator and the off-ball linebackers coach to just coaching the defense. So he can be more of a bird's eye view, go to different position groups, have a hand in a little bit more of all of it, just like Ryan Grubb can on offense. And I think that seems to be the right way to go about it, in my opinion.
Okay, interesting. I want to hit on something you just said. So you think that Coach Womack will not be the primary defensive recruiter? You think he'll have more?
Yes.
Okay.
So now, granted, I say not. He still will have a hand in recruiting. There's no doubt. But you can only have 11 off-campus recruiters, and one of those is going to be Courtney Morgan. Your general manager counts as one of those people.
Yep, understood.
So that's, you only got 10. And just with what they've added, I don't think Jason Jones is going to be one. I think Bo Linguist will kind of represent the entire secondary out there. Chuck Morrell, Freddie Roach, those are guys that you want out there. Christian Robinson with the outside linebackers. But on offense, there's actually more offensive coaches than there are defensive coaches, which kind of makes sense. But Nick Sheridan did really good work with Keelan Russell. So you don't want to really take him off the trail. And Ryan Grubb was an NFL guy too. Or an NFL guy for a year. Mm-hmm. So he kind of got used to not having to do all that recruiting and everything else. I think just him having a chance just to focus on the X's and O's of the offense, I think that'll help him.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that was something that when Ryan Grubb, came to Alabama and there was some discussion around what his role would be, I feel like a lot of us kind of assumed that when it comes to recruiting, for him, it doesn't make as much sense for him to get back on that trail when you have someone like Coach Sheridan that's already there. And that was one reason that I was pretty, high on Sheridan would stay on staff in some role. You mentioned Brian Ellis. I have to talk and give him his flowers. He was Georgia Southern's OC when I was there, and I cannot speak highly enough about him. I mean, his family's great. He's great. He has been awesome. You mentioned his development of the tight end position at Alabama. They got what they needed out of it. And so I think you're looking at a really talented group of coaches that is only going to continue to get comfortable, like we said at the beginning of this. But Clint, I do want to get to Jim's comment here, and we can talk about that before we move on to the next thing. So he says, Austin Mack spent a year with Grubb at Washington. Do you think it gives him a better chance at winning the job? Clint, I'm going to let you start off first, and I'll give you my thoughts on the back end.
Yeah, I do think it helps. How much it helps, I don't really know. But yeah, there's some familiarity there. I think where Austin Mack's familiarity with Grubb is going to help Alabama the most is just making sure everybody in that room understands, and really he will also be a piece that helps the entire offense. But it's more so of how he'll prepare that entire room for what to expect. Ryan Grubb is disciplined Austin Mack. Like I say discipline like he did something wrong, like maybe, bad throw in practice or a bad had whatever. I'm sure he's probably had his ass chewed by Ryan Grubb at some point. But like that's a relationship that's already been established.
Right.
And so there's some, once again, comfort there where, he can help as far as being that bridge between the new guys, including Keelan Russell, and, the new play caller. And I think, guys, Alabama really has on offense a player for almost every position. We've already talked about that. But between Josh Cuevas, Jeremy Bernard, Parker Brailsford, and Austin Mack, for the 5 positions, the only one is not that doesn't have that is running back, which also is Robert Gillespie, who is a returning coach from under Saban. But you've got a guy who can kind of help with that transition with 4 of the 5 position groups. And so, I think that'll be rather helpful.
Yeah, Austin Mack was a player that I said was kind of my sleeper player. Again, something we talked about on Cover Crimson. We got some great responses. But, Jim, I do think it will help him. And I think that, from what we've heard about Austin Mack, and we talked about this quite frequently on this show, there's been so much positive feedback that this can't hurt him. This can only help him. And I think that he's going to have a leg up just in knowing what to expect, how, Grubb wants a practice to be ran and things like that. So I feel like there won't be an adjustment period. There honestly might be some excelling that takes place because he's comfortable. We have talked about that word. That's been like the word of the show, where he knows exactly what he's going to get. He can actually kind of fit more of a leadership role too because of it. But again, I said that he was my sleeper player before Grubb came in. So I'm going to stick to that. I like Austin Mack. Now, again, that is not me saying he's going to win this job outright. Not at all. But I do think that this quarterback competition gets pretty interesting with this added layer. We will know more about this as spring practice commences. I've seen on Twitter today on X that it could be March 3rd. The first day of spring practice. Now, that is not confirmed. We're just kind of putting that out there. I've been seeing some people tweet about it. So, that's something to circle, and hopefully we'll be able to get out there and see what's happening.
Yeah, I hope that's the date. I mean, that would be what, just over 3 weeks away.
Yeah.
That's not far at all. What I will say is kind of the quarterback position. This is how I'm kind of viewing it. And maybe as I work my way through, sometimes I have these thought processes, and I'll think one thing, and then as I'm actually working through it, I'm like, maybe.
Happens to me too, Clint.
It kind of feels like, what I was going to say was it almost feels like Keelan Russell, bare minimum, is probably locked into quarterback too. Like, if Austin Mack wins the job, Ty Simpson probably transfers, right?
Yeah.
So Keelan Russell will be quarterback too in that instance. If Ty Simpson wins the job, then, I don't see Keelan Russell being QB3. Now, maybe I'm wrong on that, but I've said I feel like that any opportunity that you can get this guy reps in a game, if you think he is your future, and you also have to live in this NIL era where it's like, if he feels confident he's going to be the next guy, even if he has to sit in 2025, I don't think that affects him. I really don't. I think that I'm sure he might not be happy about that, but as long as he's projected to be the guy in 2026, I don't think it's going to matter that much. But if he's QB3 and Austin Mack is getting all those backup reps and stuff, and he doesn't feel overly confident that he'll be the next guy either. I think that was a big thing with like Bryce Young. I'm not saying he would have transferred had he not been QB2, but I think it made a statement, or it should have made a statement for that quarterback battle the following year after Mac Jones left, that Bryce had been working as the quarterback 2 ahead of Paul Tyson, and he was younger. So I kind of view it in a similar fashion where Keelan Russell might end up being QB1. But I think in most scenarios, if it was me, barring, now granted, you got to go out there and prove it to some extent. You can't be the clear-cut third best quarterback right now, and they're putting you at quarterback 2 just to get you reps. But I think that he's going to be given every opportunity at bare minimum to end up being Alabama's QB2.
And Coach DeBoer has been pretty open about how if you are performing well in practice, you will have a chance to make it onto the field. And I think that really applies to the quarterback position this year. We've mentioned some comments that he made at the Senior Bowl about how the common factor between all three of them is not much game time, right? All three of them, they haven't seen much of the field. And so, again, we talked about this on a previous episode. That kind of levels the playing field. Jim follows up with, better question is, would Grubb lean toward the player he has a relationship with? Based on what I have gathered about Ryan Grubb, his personality, his competitiveness, I don't think so. I don't think that really matters. Again, I am not, speaking to Ryan Grubb. I do not have a, working relationship with him to know directly what he's thinking. But based on what I've heard about him, I think what is true is that, one, he runs a very creative offense. Him and Coach DeBoer combined, it's going to be creative. It's going to be interesting, fun to watch. But two, competitor. And that's what I've heard across the board just about who he is. And even at the NFL level, he was just a competitor.
Yeah, well, and, one of the things about Kalen DeBoer, and, I'm sure Ryan Grubb was probably a part of this because he's kind of followed him everywhere he's been, but there was an emphasis on being familiar with one quarterback at a new stop. And that's just something that you've seen. Like, it was an emphasis when they went from Fresno to Washington. They tried to get Jake Haener. That was the first swing. Couldn't make that work from a, academic standpoint. I don't think some of his stuff was transfer, or he couldn't get into the school. I mean, it wasn't like he was making bad grades. There was something there, though, that didn't allow him to actually transfer. And then they pivoted and went to Michael Penix Jr., who they were both familiar with, or at least Kalen DeBoer was familiar with at Indiana. So then he gets to Alabama, and what does he do? Michael Penix is gone. Austin Mack was kind of viewed as a solid developmental quarterback, and so they're like, hey, we're familiar with this guy. They went and got him. But now Kalen DeBoer, he knows all these quarterbacks, or at least, Austin Mack and Ty Simpson. And, no one's going to know Keelan Russell yet to that extent. But so Ryan Grubb might not, but I think Kalen DeBoer's familiarity, I think that was everybody assumes you bring them in to be the starter. And I'm sure, Jake Haener was, if he would have come in, he would have been the starter. Michael Penix was obviously brought in to be the starter. I don't think that just automatically means Austin Mack was brought to Tuscaloosa. I think they liked his long-term outlook and what he could become, and he could be that guy. But at the end of the day, I think it was just, hey, we need to know exactly what we're going to get at least one of our quarterbacks. But that could just be a familiarity thing, and it's like the other guys just develop a little bit better. And while Austin Mack probably, would have had a lot of success, that didn't automatically mean he's going to be in the starter at some point.
Yeah, let's move on to some more of these quotes. And this is actually about Coach DeBoer. I know there was a lot of questions, a lot of opinions, let's say, Clint, on Coach DeBoer this season, his outlook on things, his personality. And I personally am in the camp of, what better people to take their word for than the players that are under him? So this is what James Burnip had to say. He said, Coach DeBoer was awesome. I love that guy. He came in, he opened his arms to me. I talked to him frequently. He always was helping me out with my punting, my career, anything, even off the football field. At the end of the day, he's my guy. Same thing with Coach Saban. I can talk to him about anything, no matter what the situation is. I really like DeBoer, and I love the way it's all heading.
I mean, you can't. And for being a punter, that's like I don't know. A lot of places operate. The punter, the kicker, and the long snapper kind of go off to themselves in practice, and they don't really see or talk to anybody. Sometimes they were even on completely different fields. I'll put it this way. Our long snapper in high school used to bring Lunchables out to the practice field, and he would sit over. They would also over there and eat Lunchables during practice, and that's how not involved they were at times. It doesn't seem like, and I'm sure Nick Saban was this way too, because he was kind of not a control freak, but about as close to that as you could possibly get in a good way. But Kalen DeBoer has that personality too, where he wants to know everybody. He wants players to feel like they can come to him and talk to him. They're college kids. There's so much. I mean, breakups can devastate some of these kids. Yeah. There's so much that can affect them. Some of them, I mean, I know for a fact there was a starter for Alabama that was real big on reading all the stuff on social media, and it was negative about him, and it affected his game in a massive, massive way. And so, like, you've got to navigate that as a coach. You've got to get them past that, or they got to be able to trust you to where they can, you can get them off of social media. You can get them any sort of help that they need. Like, I feel like Kalen DeBoer is one of those types of coaches, and James Burnip's a good representation of that in the sense of, your punter saying those things about a coach. It's probably not as commonplace as maybe a guy. If it was Jalen Milrose saying this about him because he was working with him every day,
right,
it would make more sense. But I think it being Burnip is a pretty good testament.
Yeah, you mentioned a long snapper, and I've always said that if I were to be a professional athlete, a long snapper, that's a pretty sweet deal. I have to say that, or maybe like a QB3. I mean, you just kind of hang out. I mean, not saying there's not a lot of hard work that goes into it, but on the professional level, I think I'd want to eat my Lunchables during practice. But I don't know. What about you, Clint? I mean, if you tomorrow are signed with an NFL team 1 year, what position would you want to play?
Here's the problem: is I'm more educated than I was. Like I'm 6 foot, a hair under 6 foot. Weighed about 230 in high school, 225 somewhere in there. So I was a linebacker. Probably wasn't the athlete I needed to be to play linebacker on a D1 level, but I always thought I could switch to fullback because if you just said, "Hey, I just need you to go hit that dude," I mean, I'm putting my face mask into his face mask, and I'm hitting him as hard as I possibly can. Yeah. Like that was just, and now I've learned that is not good for the old noggin. So I would have wanted to have played fullback. First of all, it's a dying position. Yeah. I don't think I have the height to be an H-back or kind of a tight end fullback hybrid. So if you could have put me in that old traditional fullback role and you could have guaranteed that I wouldn't have had CTE permanently, which you probably couldn't have guaranteed me that, then that would have been the position because I just loved hitting people. Yeah. Otherwise, do I want to be a quarterback with all that pressure? I mean, it's a glamorous position. Probably not. Tight end probably would be fun.
Tight end would be fun. I think like a corner, that would just be disruptive.
Yeah, you got to be super confident to play corner though, because you're left on an island. It's one of like the most exposable positions on the field. Like if you have a cover bust, I mean
it's obvious.
It's obvious, and everybody's going to be ready. So that's a lot of pressure. Corners, and especially in Nick Saban's defense, the way they were left on islands, you had to have some dogs out there, and Alabama did for the most part. But, right. Yeah, I kind of guess I'm more of a trench guy.
Okay, low pressure, I'd go long snapper. Just hanging
okay.
Out. Okay. But most fun, I think corner. Just to be, I mean, again, as you say that, I'm thinking about this. Poor Terrion Arnold this past season. I mean, he was just roasted, I feel like, every game because when he made a mistake, even in his rookie year, it was all lights are on him. He's a very confident guy. We love Terrion on the next round. He's great. But it's funny because you do bring up that, you're left out there. You're pretty exposed. But I do think it would be so fun when you make that play. I don't know.
The best athlete on the field is a corner. Yeah. It is. I mean, obviously that there's nuance to that, like, but typically your best athletes are at corner because not only is it one of those skill positions that requires a lot of speed, but it's a reactionary position. Like a receiver knows where he's going. He knows what he's doing. A corner has to be able to match that athleticism while reacting, which just makes it it's a very, very difficult position to play. I don't think people realize, and it's crazy. I mean, Jordan Edmonds is a guy, a top 100 recruit right now that Alabama's kind of trending for. I was looking at some of his stuff just as far as like the length. That's like just over 6'2", about 175 pounds. I think he ran like in the high 4.5s as far as that Atlanta combine that they just held, Under Armour combine. I mean, in high school, you're going to get faster when you get into college. A lot of people don't realize that. But, just when I started thinking about it earlier, just the dudes that they've recruited at corner. Zion Gibson is a guy, another top 100 prospect they've got committed right now. They're in it for a lot of other corners. Brandon Arrington is a guy who's probably going to end up playing corner if he comes to Alabama, or might even be wherever he ends up. Yeah. But it's just they prefer length out there. They prefer athleticism. And, they've done a really good job of targeting that position specifically.
Well, you guys won't see me in a long snapper position or a corner position, unfortunately. And I think, Clint, your time has also passed for a fullback. But I love these kind of conversations. Let us know what position you would want to play in the NFL if you could go out there tomorrow. I don't know. I watch these players, and I think one hit would absolutely take me just down. I don't think I'd be able to get up from that. But that's why strength and conditioning coaches matter. and they get these guys ready to play. Clint, do you have anything else to add before we head off here?
No, fun conversation. And we'll continue to talk. I mean, especially now that we're kind of getting a better idea of where spring practice is starting. I love these conversations where you're talking about players. They're done at Alabama. Mm-hmm. It's a more honest review. Now, granted, they're not going to say anything bad. I mean, it's pre-draft as well, so you're not going to see anybody out here dogging their coaches. But I will say, like, you get a little bit more honesty out of these guys, and they'll kind of admit some of the faults. Some of the areas that they want to see improved and all that stuff, and just the way that I think everything seems to be moving in unison. When you hear Kalen DeBoer talking about year 2 and how excited he is, and you talk about some of the players who are coming in, recruits like Keelan Russell, their excitement for year 2 and how they think it's going to develop, and you got former players saying the same thing, and you got current players saying the same thing. You're going to get, no one's going to say, well, I think we're moving in the wrong direction. But it seems like someone like Kalen DeBoer, they don't just say stuff to say stuff. Like, they're not just going to they're not going to create a lot of off-season excitement just to have things massively disappoint in the fall. Because all you do is set yourself up for failure there. And in fact, a lot of times you'll say, hey, we got a lot of work to do. We need to get better in this area. You're kind of preparing people for the struggles. The fact that Kalen DeBoer, while it is early, seems to be pretty excited about year 2. All the different moving pieces that they've kind of had, with guys coming back, transfer portal, coaching staff changes. I just think that the product is going to be significantly better.
Yeah, I agree. I think we're going to see a much different spring. I'm excited to bring you guys that coverage. I will be in Tuscaloosa, coming up in the next couple of months to give you guys, behind the scenes looks into what is going on, whether it's hopefully some practice viewing windows, post-practice press conferences with coaches, players. We'll have to see. I'm curious how it's going to shift and what the differences will be, but we're excited to bring it all to you guys. And as we, progress through February, it does feel like this month is going by way quicker than January. Do you agree with me on that, Clint?
Yeah. No doubt. I feel like it should be like February 3rd.
Yeah, and it's already the 12th. So, we'll have some exciting things coming up. Make sure you are following us at Cover Crimson on X, on Instagram. We'd love to have you over there. And then, of course, go to covercrimson.com, sign up for the message boards. We have a great time there. Clint does a great job of really breaking down position groups and giving some awesome insight that you really can't find anywhere else. So, Clint, we appreciate you for that. But if you want to be in the know about Alabama football, there's no better place to go than covercrimson.com. Like I said, $25 off your annual subscription. We're going to get into the thick of spring practice. That'll take us to summer camp, fall camp. And this season will be here before you know it. So get in on the fun. We'd love to have you. We will be live on Friday. Clint, should we go and say Friday at noon?
Friday at noon sounds good to me. So you can just expect us for anybody that watches the next round live. Be prepared to hop on with us as soon as they end.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, guys, we'll see you Friday at noon. Until then, go sign up for Cover Crimson, and we'll see you there.